It's time now for What the Farage with GBNews star Nigel. It looked like Putin initially won the battle of the press conferences this afternoon at nearly the exact time Boris Johnson was due to appear at a joint session with Ukraine's leader. Look who popped up on our TVs.
I want to mention that we are already closely studying the written answers from the US and NATO, which we received on January the 26th. But we can already see that fundamental Russian concerns were ignored.
The PM did eventually get his chance at showing he's not cowed by the Kremlin's battalions massed on the Ukrainian border, though.
I think it's vital that in Moscow they understand that there will be automaticity in the way that we apply these sanctions, so that the minute there is a further incursion into sovereign Ukrainian territory, then those sanctions will apply.
Boris yesterday missed the chance of a crucial call with Putin. Some critics, as I mentioned in my digestive, question whether he can be the peacemaker. He hopes that call, though, now scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. So Nigel Farage joins me now. So Nigel, it feels like today the fight was on TV, wasn't it? A very bullish Boris in Ukraine, but Putin not letting him get away with it and actually scheduling his press conference just before Boris was due to take the stage.
Well, you can like or dislike Vladimir Putin, and I wouldn't want to take him to see my mum for tea on a Sunday afternoon, I've got to tell you. But he is a very canny, very sharp, very clever political operator. And actually, Dan, the West has had this wrong for 30 years. Our constant desire to expand the European Union and NATO right up to the borders of Russia, something, by the way, that George Osborne and David Cameron were the biggest cheerleaders for, has been a geopolitical error. Because if you poke Russian bears with sticks, guess what happens? They actually snarl and bite back. So I do think we've had a lot of this wrong. Now, as for Boris, well, of course, going to Ukraine was a great thing. Wonderful diversionary tactic after the extraordinary scenes in the House of Commons yesterday afternoon. I can't recall a debate in which a British Prime Minister clung on to the fact that a police investigation into criminal behaviour was the only protective shield that he had. I mean, it's hard to even get this around your mind. But he went there today with zero credibility because of, and let's be frank about it, dissembling, dishonesty over the last few months about the extent of the parties that took place, about the boozing culture that he as the boss allowed in number 10. He was unable, at a moment when many think we're on the verge of the biggest military conflagration since 1945 in Europe, he was unable to speak to the Russian president because he was there taking the abuse in the House of Commons. And I just think the Ukrainians must have thought today, how in God's name is this man the leader of the number 2 country in NATO? And I thought the press conference humiliated him further. And you could have a dig.
Or did it humiliate the BBC, Nigel?
Well, I thought it was very interesting. I mean, I have to say that I'm not a fan of the BBC. I've suffered personally at the hands of the BBC.
Oh, yes, you have. Yes, you have.
Even 2 weeks ago, Nick Robinson on the Today programme called me a serial loser. I mean, fine, I can live with it. I'm big enough and ugly enough. But James Landale, I got to tell you, is one reporter at the BBC I've got the utmost regard for. Intellectual, very much neutral politically, and I genuinely say that and believe that. And he covered me personally in the 2015 general election campaign, and I had no complaints about him, his demeanour, his behaviour. But the fact that he, a man of good judgment, decides to say, well, isn't it a bit of a farce you're here, Boris, because you couldn't speak to Putin, so what do you have to say? And can you hang on as Prime Minister? No, I actually thought for once, we could criticise the BBC and the press, but actually what they said today was pertinent. I thought it was yet another humiliation for Boris. He tries to bluster his way out of it. You know something? It's not working anymore.
But Nigel, you must accept that when it comes to the policy, we are taking the right approach, because we're taking an approach that Biden doesn't have the balls to take, that Macron certainly doesn't have the balls to take, and, oh my goodness, Scholz doesn't have the balls to take, nor the EU. I mean, Britain has to do this right. We've got to stand up to Russia here.
Look, I think that's right. I mean, I've always been of the view, by the way, that Russia won't invade the Ukraine. And it's very much a minority position. I'm used to minority positions. I've spent my life in
and you're usually right in the end.
Until they become majorities. Yeah. I think this is a great big game of chess that Putin's playing. He's trying to divide the West. He's doing it amazingly effectively. Look, was Boris right to say, if you do this, we will take action? Yes, of course he was. And I don't doubt that. And we should, of course, discourage any military move into the Ukraine. But here's the problem. Antony Blinken, US Secretary of State, when he was asked the other day about NATO expansion, including the Ukraine, refused to rule it out. There's an easy give here. We say to Putin, NATO will not be joining the Ukraine. We recognize the historical significance of buffer states. After all, we invented Belgium to be a buffer state. We used to understand this stuff. That costs us nothing, but it also actually would now leave Putin as being the bad guy if he did anything, if we'd made that gesture. And that's the kind of geopolitics game I would like to see Johnson playing. But he won't do it because he's part of the globalist establishment.
Nigel, just finally, I want to talk about Liz Truss cracking down on this Russian dirty money, which we know flows into London. And of course, with your city experience, you know all about this. I mean, is this just talk? Because, of course, we've got to do something. But is this just talk from Liz Truss, or do you believe that she is going to take a much harder line?
I think the truth of it is the London property market has been propped up with dirty money for decades. And that's one of the reasons London house prices have become totally unaffordable.
Yeah, for ordinary Brits.
Men and women and families out there striving. I think the city always takes the hit for this, but I actually think the property market has probably absorbed more of that illegal money and drug money and laundered money and goodness knows what else. I mean, look, we need the City of London to have a good financial reputation. Of course we do. And actually, you know what? Billions are flowing into the city. We're doing very, very well. So look, if Liz Truss is serious about cleaning it up when it comes to money laundering, genuine money laundering, that's fine. But if we finish up with the aim of stopping Russian money laundering, over-regulating the City of London, then we rather kill the goose that lays the golden egg. So this has to be done carefully. This has to be done cleverly. It has to be done by people that understand money, banking, transactions. Liz Truss has none of those skills.